Hang on a minute, do they think we're children? Let's begin. Now, of course, I don't know about you, but quite often it seems like if you drive down a single carriageway road, which obviously has a 60 mph speed limit, occasionally you kind of get stuck by something like a lorry or a van or whatever doing something like 50 miles an hour and need to overtake them, which obviously at the moment is quite easy. You just see that nothing's coming, just go straight round them. However, there is one big problem with that, which might soon be coming along very, very soon, as it appears they've got their way. And no, strangely, this time I'm not actually talking about the government, because obviously they make our rules, don't they? But unfortunately for this one, the EU, even though we voted for Brexit, is unfortunately having a say on this, as it seems, because the article says that drivers have been given a final warning as mandatory speed limiters are set to be installed on all new cars sold from July, and the new law will apparently be introduced by the EU, which will make it a legal requirement for every new car and van sold in the European Union to have a speed limiter installed in a bid to tackle speeding. But I know what you're going to say, we're not in the European Union anymore, so why does it affect us? Well, apparently that is because, as it says here, although the law was created for the EU, the legislation states that it also applies to all cars sold in Europe, not just those sold in the EU member states. So it applies to us in the UK, even though we're no longer a member, which absolutely sucks, doesn't it? Because, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that people should be speeding all over the place. Speeding is wrong and accidents could be caused because of it, although there are times, aren't there, where you do need to move around vehicles that are just poodling along, because those slow vehicles themselves could be the ones which cause accidents, as they make people impatient, don't they? Which, yes, I know, admittedly that isn't an excuse for speeding. However, if those cars were doing the proper speed, then there wouldn't be a problem with there. But anyway, there is a slight way around this, because if you act quickly, we have 1 month until the law comes in, so it's our final chance to buy a car without a mandatory speed limiter fitted. So there is technically still time to get around it, isn't there? If you either buy or lease a car, which a dealer already has on their forecourt or in stock or whatever. But even they are subject to this after July, because it says here that the new rule also applies to cars that have already been manufactured and yet to be sold. So models currently on showroom floors will need to be retrofitted in order to be compliant from July the 7th, or they can't apparently actually be sold legally. So we've got until July the 7th, folks, to buy a car that doesn't actually want to be our mum. So what actually happens then if you buy one of these cars? I mean, does it just stop dead at 70, or is there some sort of warning? Well, apparently, according to this, the devices must vibrate, make noises, and even slow down a vehicle automatically when it detects a speed limit being broken. And it doesn't actually say if this will happen instantly or you get 1 or 2 miles an hour over. But either way, I'm guessing it's not going to be good if you're in the middle of overtaking and something like this speed limiter kicks in, hey? Although, to be honest, I could be wrong, because it says here that drivers will apparently be able to deactivate the speed limiters, but they are instantly turned on upon getting back in the car. So if you don't want this limiter on, then I guess you just turn it off every time you start the car, like pushing the start button. But then again, will we be in a situation where we'll be turned into pilots or something, where we have to flick the right buttons on or to deactivate the things or whatever every time we want to start up the car, or in their case, plane, I guess. It also says here, though, listen to this, that drivers will apparently be able to forcibly push on the accelerator to deactivate the automatic limiter, a bit like overriding cruise control. So what's the bloody point in these? Surely these limiters are now kind of useless if we can just override them at will, because surely that's not limiting us at all. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for. I don't think we should actually be limited in the first place. I think a much more better deterrent is obviously the fines that speeders get, rather than punishing everyone in the UK by having our cars presumably giving us a nag. And if we even dare to go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, which obviously, as we have to pay attention to the road and not have our eyes fixed on the speedo, is quite easy to do, isn't it? But then again, I could be wrong, and this might be a wonderful thing, presumably according to Graham Conway, the managing director of Select Car Leasing, because he has welcomed, it says here, the new law. But apparently that doesn't mean people should care less about driving responsibly, which obviously, that goes without saying, people should be responsible drivers. He said, these new laws are hugely welcome in order to help combat speeding and dangerous driving. Well, as I said, perhaps if they punish all the bell-ends on the road, then that might be a much better deterrent, eh? So what actually happens then? Apparently it says here that the technology is designed to warn drivers when they are approaching the speed limit. And if the driver doesn't slow down, naughty, the speed limiter reduces the engine power And the vehicle speed, although it is important to note that limiters can be manually overwritten, which is useful in areas where the technology may not keep up with actual events on the road, which, hang on a minute, kind of says to me that if there's something like roadworks on the road and they have to put in temporary speed limits, then presumably these limiters aren't actually going to kick in at all, so what's the bloody point? I mean, they're useless, aren't they, it seems? And of course, I don't know about you, it seems, doesn't it, that if they reduce the engine power, unless you forcibly press the accelerator to overtake, that may in itself, if you are, I guess, coming from a lower engine power than what you would be normally, may make overtaking a car take slightly longer and therefore might be an issue in itself, eh?